Well, today is Veterans Day, and I thought we'd do a special edition of 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse in honor of our veterans. Um, Here's the flag that was presented to my mother after my grandfather passed away. My grandfather fought in World War I. My father was in the Navy in World War II. So I'm basically honoring their memory today, as well as other people who have served and are still serving. And the Grindhouse is full of people who served their country and wound up coming back from WW2 and finding a home doing motion pictures. And we had Sam Peckinpah, Brian Keith, and Lee Marvin in the Marines. Lee Marvin, as most of us would know, was wounded during WW2 in the Pacific Theater. He was shot in the ass, actually. And, of course, in the Army, we had our old buddy, the Colonel, David Friedman. We had Warren Oates. We had Russ Meyer and Claude Atkins. And in the Navy, we had Ernest Borgnine, Lee Van Cleef, and Strother Martin. And in the Air Force, we had Charles Bronson. Other guys that served were L.Q. Jones, I believe Jack Lambert, and Robert J. Wilkie, and of course our good buddy Gary Kent, who I believe was in the Navy, and Tom Savini, who was in the Vietnam War as a combat photographer, and that's where he learned, his special effects stuff. Growing up, on a Sunday after dinner on Channel 5 in New York, they ran World War II films. Stuff like Sands of Iwo Jima, Bataan, Back to Bataan, and Guadalcanal Diary. And with Guadalcanal Diary, that's the first time I saw Anthony Quinn and Richard Jekyll. And Richard Jekyll actually, after shooting that film, joined the Navy and fought in the Navy in WW2. So, a lot of these films, were shot actually during World War II. I mean, Guadalcanal Diary had William Bendix in it also, Richard Conte, Lionel Stander, a bunch of, character actors from the 40s, Lloyd Noland, I believe. So, like I said, a lot of it, was shot from our viewpoint, and the evil Japanese and shit like that. I remember, I think it was Bataan, where basically everybody got wiped out. And there was a lot of, for a black and white film in the 40s, there was a lot of fucking blood in that film. And I believe it ended with the survivor screaming that he's not going to give up, and it sort of focused on the machine gun barrels spitting lead at the approaching Japanese troops until they got him. So, but there were other films shot in the 60s and 70s that were like epic World War II films that, played in the Grindhouse. And one of them was The Battle of the Bulge in the 60s. And that starred Henry Fonda, Robert Ryan, Telly Savalas, Charles Bronson, Ty Hardin. What the hell was this guy's name? Shit, I'm trying to think. James MacArthur, George Montgomery, bunch of people. It was an epic tank battle, and they even had the scene where basically the American prisoners were massacred by the Germans with machine guns. So, really, really epic film, good film, and oddly that Charles Bronson, Robert Ryan, and Telly Savalas wound up in The Dirty Dozen a couple years later. Bronson and Savalas were prisoners. Robert Ryan was a nasty general. Ernest Borgnine was a 5-star general. George Kennedy was some kind of officer. Ralph Meeker was an officer. Clint Walker, Donald Sutherland, Trini Lopez. I'm trying to think who the other ones were. Well, they were all POWs, Savalas and them. John Cassavetes, of course, he was there. Strange story that Trini Lopez never made it to the end of the film because it seems that he tried to hold up the director for more money instead of giving him what he wanted. They just wrote him out of the film and had him killed during the parachuting scene. In other words, he was killed off camera, so they didn't have to pay him. So, of course, The Dirty Dozen, as we all know, spawned that whole genre of like take prisoners out of jail and give them weapons and send them against the enemy genre. That was what came out of The Dirty Dozen. But after that, there was another film called The Devil's Brigade, which starred William Holden, Vince Edwards and Cliff Robertson as they tried to put American prisoners and misfits together with Canadian elite troops. And that film brought Richard Jekyll back as a convict, also Andrew Prine, Luke Askew, Claude Atkins, and a bunch of other people. And the fight scene in the bar in The Devil's Brigade is one of the best fucking fight scenes I have ever seen in a film. And then there's another one. It's a favorite of mine. It's sort of a psychedelic war movie from 1970. Might have been 2 or 3. I might be off. Called Castle Keep. And it starred Burt Lancaster, Peter Falk, Scott Wilson, Michael Conrad from Hill Street Blues, Patrick O'Neill, and this was a ragtag group of GIs that were sent to guard a castle that's in the way of the German invasion, and all kinds of crazy shit they did to pass the time while doing it. There's some great dialogue, there's some great scenes, and there's an epic battle at the end where they defend the castle and basically nobody gets out alive except for one soldier and this woman he takes with him. So that's a real good one to check out. Another one that's sort of like off everybody's radar, which was directed by Brian Trenchard Smith, was Siege at Firebase Glory, about the Tet Offensive in the Vietnam War. And starring Arlie Ermy and none other than Wings Hauser. And Wings is really good in this. And if you've got a weak stomach, I would not advise you watching this, because this basically shows the Vietnam War as how fucked up and brutal it really was. And Arlie Emery, of course, we all know, was a drill sergeant. He's done a lot of other stuff like Full Metal Jacket and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. And he's really, really good in this film, so it's definitely worth checking out. Again, to all those who have served and are still serving, my deepest gratitude and respect. And for those who made the ultimate sacrifice, I also thank you. It's been an odd week. Something came up, a little personal. Person I have lost touch with 20 years ago all of a sudden came back into my life for whatever, and I'm happy about it. I don't want to go into detail, but I think things happen for a reason, and maybe some good stuff's going to come out of this. I can only hope. So that's my show for today. Raining like a fuck out here. All you guys in Florida, stay safe, because this is your second hit on this shit, which is pretty fucked up. Rain's even heading up here. So please have a safe weekend. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. And above all, those who have served, thank you for your service, and we will catch you on the flip side.